Hey guys, so this is a last minute one. I'm doing snippet number 2. I know you guys can read it later, so I don't expect anybody to suddenly notice that I'm here. But it's 5 o'clock again, but it's Saturday, so this might give a few more people a chance. Snippet number 2 from the Elementals Magic, due out on Monday, and except for those who pre-ordered early for me and got a little bonus material. So we'll be doing a poll later on that to see how much people like that experience. But for now, here's a little more of the Elementals Magic. And you know, you can also, by the way, watch this later right before you go to bed. Maybe it'll help you sleep. Maybe it'll entertain you for a little while. Okay, Chapter 2. 2 more days passed with no sign of the air elemental or Simon Wesley. If it weren't for the dog squeaking and barking in her kitchen, or Bernie arguing with Wilmark over the finer points of dealing with Kashgars, Maggie might have called everything routine. Taylor was back at work eating donuts in 2 bites and arguing the finer points of the Cowboys, and even her mother had started up her drumming circle again. But Maggie couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the calm, a dangerous lull before the gale force winds. Rule number 6 and number 15, subset D, whistled Bernie through his teeth, pulling Maggie back to the present moment. Bernie stabbed a thick, calloused finger against the kitchen counter. Plans are shared with fewer than 5 without special permission. And I already told a few mechanics, so you're out. Not a word about Plan B to get the Earth functioning more smoothly. I've already said too much. You've barely said anything. He grabbed Bernie by the shoulder, squeezing. I could be an ally. The Godwin Knights have access to ancient magic. Don't discount what I can do to help. Bernie rubbed his knuckles into the soft flesh where Wilmark's shoulder connected, pressing hard. This is not the right time to be breaking that rule. I have my limits. He glanced over at Maggie and looked back at Wilmark. Maggie rolled her eyes, drinking down the last of the coffee in her mug. It's like I'm watching you 2 fight in slow motion. I appreciate it, given you're in my kitchen, but cut it out, or take it outside and get it over with in the alley. Don't want any chickens harmed in your magical man-off. Sling a fireball, pelt you with bubbles, take out some of your frustrations. Wilmark ignored her, standing up to his full height and towering over Bernie. Good to know you have some limits, he growled. He looked at Maggie. I'm going back out to hunt for Simon and his followers. The Firefey may be able to help me locate him. Maggie reached down to scratch behind Dexter's ears, but he rolled over before she could, and she let out a laugh and rubbed his belly. You're officially a dog. He let out a squeak and a bark and rolled back over. She stood back up, holding onto the mug in her hands. I know you're frustrated. Dark magic is giving him a few new tricks. We'll find him. I don't need pep talks. Save them for the gnome. Hey, the gnome is right here. Bernie was ripping open a silvery Pop-Tart sleeve with his teeth, smelling it before biting off a corner. Blueberry. Listen, tall, dark, and sullen. This isn't a quick fix. We're getting hit from a few very powerful angles. He bit down again, crumbs catching in his beard as he chewed and talked. Mother Earth, the Kashgars, those tall bastards, and magic that is even older than the Godwin Knights. I get that you want to help and get a check in the win column, but we have a union. No outsiders, no exceptions. Chase Simon. It's a much better use of your time. Who knows? You might get lucky. Maggie stood up suddenly when she saw the color rise in the Elven Knight's face. He had the same murderous look in his eyes the last time they fought off Simon. She slid quickly between them and felt the knight push against her as he leaned toward Bernie, his hard, muscular back pushing her a few inches across the floor. She dug in and stood her ground, pressing back against him. Bernie calmly finished the Pop-Tart, glaring at Wilmark, licking his fingers one at a time. Okay, that's enough. Maggie leaned over to Bernie and whispered, stop pushing him. He's on our side. He's actually pushing you. Stop enjoying it so much. Bernie arched an eyebrow at her. And he's on your side. My side includes you. Wilmark pushed open the screen door and marched outside, barreling off the back steps till he got to the large tree, his fists clenched at his side. Maggie went to the window and watched him standing there alone. He's been through a lot. You could give him a break, you know. Finding out you're alone in the world can't be easy. Think about what it would be like if you didn't have Jack, or Radar, or the 1,000 other cousins on this ship. Bernie came and stood next to her. There isn't quite 1,000. Don't be so dramatic. He let out a grunt as a single firefly escaped his mouth. Okay, you have a point. We have to adopt the big guy and make him part of the family. Bernie shrugged. Meh. He'll be good for getting things off the top shelves. Maggie gave him a crooked smile and nudged him a little. Way to spin the positive. Might even make a good replacement for Jake. He pursed his lips, furrowing his brow. At least be a distraction. I've seen your eyes pop a couple times when you brush up against him. Isn't there a dating service for gnomes so you can get off my back? Maybe you should go look for trouble too. Bernie looked out at Wilmark in his tall leather boots and tunic, his bow strapped to his back. You ever wonder if your neighbors are thinking you're having one long medieval festival in your backyard? My neighbors hang with my mother, and I'm pretty sure one of them is a magical. We're good. She checked her watch. I'm heading into work, and no one needs to watch the house for me. Go look for answers. If I run into trouble that's not job-related, I'll send up a few bubbles. Have you checked on Slim lately? I tucked him in last night with Del Taco, but you have a point. Bernie smoothed the front of his bright purple sweater that had a dark stain on one of the sleeves. He went to the refrigerator and opened it, staring inside. We'll need some snacks for the road. You're not leaving town. It doesn't count. There's nothing new in there since the last time you looked. It was almost easier when the trouble wouldn't stop, Maggie muttered, tapping her fingers on the top of her gun holstered at her waist. Bernie stopped rummaging in the refrigerator and threw up his hands. Now you've gone and done it. Don't you get how your magic works? It's like you're talking to the energy. Bernie's last words fell away as the sound of the grass in the backyard ripping apart grew louder. A bulge appeared in a 3-foot wide circle. The ground stirred again, the circular mound breaking into chunks and pushing upward, as if something was trying to break free. Wilmark drew an arrow in one swift motion, looking relieved he finally had something tangible to fight. The chicken startled and ran squawking into the coop, peeking out from the door, softly clucking. My egg business is going to wither and die. Maggie leaned toward the window to look out at the wet grass. The ground rose another foot. The pieces falling away as Jack's head popped above the surface, bubbles squeezing out from the sides ahead of a rush of water. He pulled his arms out and looked up, blowing dirt off his face, and gasped when he saw Wilmark's arrow aimed at his head. Jack quickly regained himself and spit bubbles, rapidly covering himself in an opaque shield. Wilmark slowly released the tension on the bow and replaced the arrow in his quiver. Bernie made a point of finishing the Pop-Tart, watching everything like it was entertainment. Wilmark's going to be a tricky one at Sunday dinners. He seems disappointed he didn't get to skewer something. Note to self, no kebabs on the menu when he's around. Aren't you going to find out why Jack made such a grand entrance? Bernie swatted the air. He's done it before. It's his way of letting me know I should be at work. There's a leak somewhere and it's gotten the best of him. It's going to be a damp day for me. Bernie swallowed hard, getting the last of the Pop-Tart down. I suppose it's ironic that was a little dry. You're out of OJ. He made his way out, pushing open the screen door. I'll bet I am. Maggie opened a cabinet, peeking inside at the nearly empty shelves. All that was left were a can of refried beans and a microwavable oatmeal cup sitting on its side. She went out to the porch and stood at the top of the steps, waiting to see if any more gnome-sized holes were going to appear. Where's the fire? Bernie was loud enough to be heard in the kitchen. There's not actually a fire, is there? Come on, spit it out, Jack. Jack scrambled out of the hole just as a geyser burst into the air, shooting a stream of water above the roofline before dying back down. Maggie jumped back, a fine mist coating her face. She recognized the smell at once from all the vacations she took as a child. That's seawater. Why is water from the Gulf poking out of my yard? Bernie finally looked concerned, marching over to where Jack stood, just as a sand shark popped out of the hole, floundering in the wet grass. Say it's not so. Jack nodded his head vigorously, throwing up his arms like words were unnecessary. The timing is off on the tides? How? That causes all kinds of problems. Remember that whole butterfly flapping its wings in India and making it rain here? There's a lot of truth to that one. I don't need to be reminded. But even the tides are connected to the pea brain. Screw with those and there's mayhem. Jack sputtered syllables, not making any sense, letting out a loud growl of frustration until exactly popped out. Come quick, you're the only one who can ease the old girl back into alignment. The more time that goes by, the worse this will get. You remember what happened back in April of '06. Don't remind me. First there was that earthquake, then the pea-brains got themselves into one world war after another. The ship was running amok for a few decades. Bernie turned and waved at Maggie, already forming bubbles in his hand. I gotta go. I'll be back as soon as I can, but stay away from Simon. What's left of him anyway. He has to be growing desperate. And whatever books he's using, they date back to the Library of Alexandria. Very old and powerful and unpredictable, and uncharted for the rest of us who have to fight it. What about the salt water? But Bernie was already gone, sliding into the ground, and Jack was right behind him. This is the start of something. A cool thread of energy passed through Maggie's head, making the ends of her fingers tingle. Yeah, something is growing closer. The tides are just a sign. The storm is almost here. Wilmart came and put one foot on the bottom step. I'll keep an eye on you, even when I'm not here. Maggie put her hands on her hips and tilted her head to the side. I'll keep an eye on you too. She held up her hand before he could say anything. It's a Parker thing. Give in now. You wanted to get closer to us. This is part of the deal. That wasn't what I meant by getting closer, and you know it. Maggie shrugged. It's what I heard. She sat down on the top step, bringing her to eye level with the tall elf. I know what it's like to feel alone in a crowd full of people. She narrowed her gaze, studying the lines on his face and the pain behind his eyes that he worked at hiding. You know, I have no idea where you consider home, and you don't have to tell me yet, but this can be a spot, like a home base. He bowed, making Maggie give a small smile. Enjoy these moments before it all comes crashing down. I wonder if all of us will survive, she thought. I'm catching on that if we're going to have a chance, we're going to have to act like a team. You're okay with that? He stood back, eyeing her. You went after Simon Wesley alone. A shudder went through Maggie at the memory. Rigorous honesty? No. But if I don't, then someone I care about could get hurt. You somehow made that list, Wilmart. You've risked your life for me more than once. He didn't say anything, like he was considering his words, and chose silence. He settled on a short wave and disappeared out the back fence and down the alley in the direction of her mother's house. Maggie stood up and let out a deep sigh. Tony Parker could slow everyone down with a bake sale. Not a bad plan. She went inside and poured another cup of coffee and slurped it up, keeping her mouth slightly open to let it cool off, carrying it outside to the back porch. Dexter darted between her legs, dashing off the steps, and ran along the chicken fencing, barking and squeaking at Gertie, who flapped her wings and ran next to him on the other side. She leaned against the rail just as her phone buzzed, and she took it out, glancing down at another text from Jake. I can explain, I promise. I'm on your side. There are things you ought to know. You don't give up. I'll give you that. Maggie stared at the message for a moment. There was at least one a day. The memory of his hand sliding up her belly and under her bra darted through her mind, catching her off guard. She briefly shut her eyes, feeling the joy of that moment, pressing her hand against her stomach. A warmth spread through her chest, trailing off into the feeling of betrayal that clung to her most of the time. She started to type something, wanting to get the feeling back, but she remembered all the times he could have mentioned it. That was his chance to be heard. She slid the phone back in her pocket and slurped more coffee. Still hot, just the way I like it. Her phone buzzed again and she pulled it out, tired of being reminded of Jake so many times a day. This time it was her partner, Peter Taylor, calling. What is it? Sergeant called us in early. There's been another strange robbery, and there's even noise now about a serial Robin Hood on the loose. They want something done about it before the media picks up on it and gives this gang a catchy nickname. Okay, I'll head out the door now. No sign of anything ominous or fortuitous. Taylor pulled the phone away from his head and called out. Okay, Fozzie, I'm coming. Put me down for 50 if you'll give me the spread. Maggie walked back inside, Dexter running in beside her. Nothing, and it's eerie, unless it's these robberies. My pea-brain senses tell me something is up, but I don't know what, or when, or where. I'm hanging up. Text me the address of the latest robbery hit, and I'll meet you there. She didn't wait for him to answer, grabbing her purse and slinging the strap over her head. Dexter, keep an eye on Pressler Street while I'm gone. He looked up at her, wagging his tail, and squeaked and barked as the Whole-Do book slipped off the table, hitting the floor with a bang. Maggie picked it up, looking at the open page, her eyes growing wider. Looks like I'm going to be a little late. I need to make a pit stop at Mom's. She left a note for Bernie, propping it up on the counter, and headed out the door. Okay, that's today's snippet. And hello, Diane. Diane, who's almost got the name in the book of the sister, who's my favorite character besides Maggie. Well, besides Bernie and besides Lil Mark, so I got a few favorite characters. Maybe even Jake. Thanks for stopping in, Diane, and I'll keep doing these, and I'm going to be doing other books too, and we'll get a time set so that it's not a surprise, but I had a few minutes. And hello, Ann. I think Ann stopped by. Wanted to give another snippet before Monday hits. And like I said, you can save this and watch it right before bedtime. A little entertainment and help you go to sleep. Or if you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't sleep, maybe my voice can put you back to sleep. Hope you guys are having a great weekend, and I will talk to you later. And send questions or send suggestions for books or anything else you want me to know for these readings. And I'm happy to listen to all ideas. Talk to you later, guys.